It is my pleasure to welcome you here all this evening and introduce tonight's featured speaker, Kathryn Gustafson. We were delighted to have Kathryn accept our invitation to serve as the 2014 Michael Hough, Ontario Association of Landscape Architects Visiting Critic in Landscape Architecture. This appointment is made possible with the support of the Ontario Association of Landscape Architects. In 2003, the association established an endowment at the faculty to enrich the academic experience of students in our Masters of Landscape Architecture program and other programs. The OLA's continued support enables Daniel students to benefit from the creative input of outstanding visiting professors, practitioners, and critics in the landscape architecture field. This lecture was named in honor of the Venerable Michael Hough, who founded the University of Toronto's Landscape Architecture program and who sadly passed away just last year. Hough pioneered an approach to landscape design that incorporated urban ecology, urban planning, and long-term development strategies. We are very pleased to be able to pay continuing tribute to Hough through OLA's generous support of our programs and students. Attending this evening is Doris Chi, Secretary for the OLA, and I'd now like to call on Doris to bring a few words of welcome from the OLA.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Allison. I have to tell you a little story. I attended the Students' Awards Luncheon yesterday. I was sitting beside, or I was talking to Rob Wright, and I said, "No, Rob, I'm really sorry, but I'm not going to be able to attend tonight's lecture because I'm going to be up north in Sudbury. And in fact, I should be there right about now. And but I got a call this morning, and I was allowed to be here instead of up there. Now, don't get me wrong, I love our northern neighbor just in the summertime. I am delighted to be here this evening, as I am anxious, just like all of you, to hear Ms. Kathryn Gustafson lecture. And as you know, and as Allison has said, Michael Hough and the Ontario Association of Landscape Architects Visiting Critic Lecture Series was established in 2003 to commemorate the 40 years of landscape architecture at the University of Toronto. I'm honored to, it was named in honor of the late Michael Hough, the founding member of Landscape Architecture program here at the U of T. This lecture series has brought to the university a number of distinguished landscape architects, environmental specialists, and enthusiasts from around the world. And we are here tonight. We are the lucky ones to hear from one of such an esteemed guest. I want to thank you, the Daniels faculty, for their efforts in connecting and engaging us with those who are inspirational, enthusiastic, artistic, and truly passionate about the land around us. On behalf of the Ontario Association of Landscape Architects, I wish you all good luck in your studies, and may the future road ahead of you is green. Thank you.
Thank you, Doris. It is now my pleasure to introduce tonight's speaker, Kathryn Gustafson. As founding principal of the award-winning firm Gustafson Guthrie Nichol, Kathryn has over 30 years of distinguished practice in landscape architecture. Her early work includes a widely known series of projects in France, and recently, acclaimed projects are located throughout Europe, North America, Africa, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East. These civic projects range in scale from 1/10 of an acre to 750 acres. As a student, I first became aware of Kathryn Gustafson's work in 1996 while studying abroad in Paris, where we were shown images of her exquisite sculpted landform of Meeting Point, the retention basin and park in Morbas, France. While I retain a vague recollection of the detailed theoretical explanation of the project's significance, which was provided in thick French accent, the expressive power of the intentional landform, a single massive soil-moving gesture, has been forever powerfully etched in my mind. Through her internationally acclaimed landscape commissions, projects including the Diana Princess of Wales Memorial Fountain, Chicago's Lurie Garden in Millennium Park, and the courtyard at the Smithsonian American Art Museum, Gustafson's work can be recognized at the vanguard of cultural production in landscape architecture. Within the Daniels faculty, the popularity of Gustafson's work is evidenced by our library's severely dog-eared copies of her books. Kathryn's diverse portfolio is renowned for intuitively incorporating fundamental sculptural and sensual qualities that enhance the human experience of landscape. As a partner in 2 offices, Gustafson Guthrie Nichol in Seattle and Gustafson Porter in London, she continues to evolve her design approach into new cultural contexts. Sharing her projects that will now remain ever etched with you, please join me in welcoming Kathryn Gustafson to the podium.
Hi. Okay. For the people that actually practice, this lecture has been really tailored for students. So if you get bored and you want to leave, that's okay. I'm sort of talking to them. So how many students in the room? Yeah, okay. You're about to embark on the best field that exists on the planet. I've tailored this around 2 things. One is how do you compose a landscape? And the second one is just talking about urban density and landscaping urban density. I do this slightly play on word. There's land, there's scape, there's texture, there's archi, which is architecture. And how do you combine all those together? Everybody here is from someplace. And that someplace is going to have a huge influence about what you do and how you think about space. I had a situation a couple of years ago where MoMA was doing this series, and they said, well, how do you design? And where are you from? And I kind of went, I don't know how you design. I just do it. And then I said, well, try to explain it. And it became part of this dialogue in the office, and with a couple of people saying, well, what do I actually do, and how do I actually do it? And so that's one of the things I'm going to try to explain here. I started out in Paris, as was said, and with very sculptural pieces. This is Shell Petroleum, and basically went to the École Nationale Supérieure de Paysage in Versailles, and graduated in 1979, opened my first office in 1980 because nobody would hire me. I was from an art training in New York and a fashion design training, and so I came out of school with quite a bit more attitude than most people. And that persists today. In 1997, I needed to come back to the United States for family reasons. So Neil Porter and I met working with Bernard Tschumi on the Villette in 1983. And so I said, I said, Neil can design absolutely anything. I said, do you want to do an office? And he said, sure, but I don't speak French. So we moved the office to London. And then Mary Bowman, who's also an architect that we brought over to the light side from the dark side, who worked at Foster's for 15 years, also joined our company about 5 years ago. And then in 2000, Jennifer Guthrie and Shannon Nichol with me opened the Seattle office because I was in the United States and I kept getting work. And then this year in May, we opened a small office in Washington, D.C. So we're about 80 people and 5 partners right about now. And I bounce around. Where am I from? I'm from Yakima, Washington. I'm from a very high plateau desert that when you irrigate it, it becomes this bright green. But everything else is Artemisia. It has the very low rainfall, but you see these snow-peaked mountains of the Cascades in the background and these extraordinary hillsides. Everybody, when they talk about my work, they say, oh, she was in fashion, it must be fabrics. No, it was those mountains of my childhood, of how you form land and how land through time comes. And then when man's intervention comes, the irrigation, there's this juxtaposition between man and nature that's fascinating. And that is done through water. Water that the Army Corps of Engineers captured in the 1930s and 40s as part of the American Beautiful, and brought that water into the Yakima Valley. So water is this precious source, and you can see this difference between irrigated and non-irrigated. As soon as you turn off the water, you're in gravelly plain desert. And so I was working in Abu Dhabi. I said, oh my God, this is such a drag. You have to have irrigation all the time, or it turns into this. And I went, yeah, that's where you're from, you know. And it just, all of a sudden backing up and saying, yeah, I was raised this way. I was raised that water is this extremely precious thing. And with it, you can do amazing things. But if you mistreat it, you also have huge problems. So when I say to you, where are you from? Look at where you're from, how it's involving you in, or not involving you because it's not something that you feel is positive. That is also a positive, to know that negative. Then I went to Versailles, and I was accepted in Versailles for the program. It taught me monumentality, as if raised in the Yakima Mountains didn't give me monumentality, but this is man's monumentality. These steps are my favorite steps in the world, the way they just go up to the sky. And you have to have a leap of faith to think that there's actually something at the top of them. And I think they're marvelous. So how do you compose a landscape? And I think that I backed up when MoMA asked me the question and said, well, what do I really do? And realized when I got out of Versailles, I knew nothing. I mean, education, you know nothing when you walk out here, really. You know, you have the next 30 years to try to figure it out. And you learned a little bit. I read all the time. And I think I read about history. Christopher Thatcher is one of the best writers for me. Poetics of Space is absolutely amazing. These are older books, but they really talk to you about the layers of history and how the history, whether it's a Mongol garden, whether it's a French garden, whether it's an Italian garden, how are they built up, what are the principles. But Christopher really writes about the culture that created them at the time. Very much like Shama, Landscape of Memory. If you haven't read it, you absolutely should. Then there's also these great theorists, and there's hundreds of them. These are just two. If you haven't read Bachelard, he's still good. He's still fabulous. And Benoit Michelin, I think, is only in French. I don't know if he actually has ever been translated, but it's absolutely magical. And so constantly feeding myself over time. And then there's all the nature stuff, the plants, the ecology, all that. So it's combining that all in your head, and then you have this shaker who is you, and something comes out of all that. So I was trying to analyze, you know, how do we do it? The main goal of our office is we do public work. I would say 95% of our work is public. We do a couple of residentials for clients that have been influential in the public work, that are really looking for something different rather than, you know, their rosebed. And in public work is making healthy cities. As both offices are very, very focused to that. A city should be a place that you never have to go out to the country to experience something. The country is brought to you. And that relief from always being inside, the ability to move outside and appropriate the outside in whatever way you can and whatever way you want to enjoy it. So looking at that is, how do you create a public space for people that actually resonates with them? And we do a lot of research. And the research is about the genus loci. And I call it, there's three roots of existence. There's the site, and that site is, what is it today, what it was, you know, in the Ice Age, what it was to Native Americans or indigenous people at the time. What was that site? And then what is happening in human culture right now? Not necessarily on this site, but what's happening in that culture, what is happening on television, theater, books, you know, everything in that culture, and then environmentally what's happening. So those are the three genus loci. Do you have water? Do you have sun? What is all the environmental pieces that make that genus loci? And and that's why I call it a place that fits. If you take that piece and you emerge it out of that site, out of that culture, it's going to fit. And it's not going to look like anything anyplace else. It's going to look like there. It's going to look like that place. If you can design something to look like the place it's from, sometimes people don't even know you've designed anything because it's so integrated into the piece. It looks like it was naturally there. It should be there, which means people appropriate it and then they start taking care of it because it feels like home. It feels like theirs. And then it becomes integrated into part of the city. So it's a very important part for us. The other thing is we do layers, and I lectured on this in Hanover, and I remember afterwards, let me go through the layers and then I'll tell you what the moderator said. There's all these layers you need to do. If you only do 4 of them, you haven't done your job. You need to have a concept. A concept gives soul. You need to have a program. What are you going to do there? All of these things you know about, but sometimes people just do 1 or 2 of them, and they don't do all of them. And they don't sometimes have that simple thing, what is your compositional integrity? What is the integrity of the piece? There is integrity environmentally, but I say there's artistic integrity also. And so how do you define that artistic integrity, and what are those goals? It's obviously there's budget, there's schedules, there's desires, there's all these things to achieve in a project. So I said, you need to achieve all those things. And the moderator said, well, your list is okay, but nobody, you don't choose all those every time. I said, if you haven't done your job. You're just being lazy because it's easier. But you should be able to hit all of those because it is very complex to design landscapes. So looking at that list, then there's another layer when we call conceptual, what I call compositional integrity or aesthetic goals. And I realized that a lot of the work that I was doing was really based on the picturesque, even though, and I think a lot of the picturesque, be careful what you call it picturesque. It's really 1700 in my opinion to 1770. It is not what I call civic decoration. Just because you do something in a curve doesn't make it picturesque. That's civic decoration. And that happened basically sort of 1810, 1850, all the way up till 1940s and World War II. So that is just the manipulation of form as a graphic pattern and that I call decoration. But the true picturesque is really working with the land and experiencing the land, and I'll talk more about it. Then I add on to that what I call the contemporary picturesque, where you have historical principles, but then you have urban ecology. And there are things that we need to do today that are about our culture that is very important as part of that urban ecology, and I'll talk a little bit more about it. So when you look at the picturesque for me, and it's going to be interesting at dinner having more debate about this with other people that think about the picturesque, but I love Turner because I always feel like he's saying there's some place to go. You've always got that sun or that moon or that light. And that light is deliverance somehow, and it's that object of desire. And I think in the paintings of the picturesque, the body is always in the landscape. So you have your foreground, which is your immediate, and then you've got your middle ground, which is the situation of the immediate, and the foreground is the goal. And so those 3 levels make up the piece. So if you look at something like Kent, Stowe by Kent and Brown, which is 1730 to 1770, your object of desire is way out there, but guess what? You can't just walk to it. You have to go around, and as you go around to get to it, everything else unfolds. And so you still have in your memory of what you're trying to get to, but then all of a sudden this grabs you, that grabs you, that grabs you, that grabs you. So it's your whole experience just unfolds by this one object of desire that pulls you through. So the historical picturesque, these are some of the things I've tried to explain our work and how it could relate to that. Everything on this side is paintings. Everything on this side is our work. So the theatricality of it, that emotion. This is a gold ribbon in Terrason. That's 1,000 meters of ribbon that goes through the trees. The taking a natural effect like a waterfall and amplifying it, making it be part of something of a surprise, creating a journey that you never see to the end of a curve. So the curve says there's something beyond. And here, again, in the painting, there's always something beyond that you're trying to go to. Creating views, framing views. The window over the garden, very, very often in picturesque gardens. And that varied scale is what I find really interesting. If you look at Versailles, there are a lot of varied scales, and it is my favorite garden in the world. The thing about the picturesque, it constantly is dealing with all scales at one time. So it will have medium ground, foreground, and foreground. And I think that's what's one of the more interesting things about it. But then there's the real classical principles of proportion and space that are still very much part of my work. And this is the National Portrait Gallery right here. Olmsted, when I came from France back here, I didn't know who Olmsted was until somebody gave me a book, and I went, wow. For me, he's the first contemporary picturesque because he grabbed what was part of nature, and especially in Back Bay Fens, which is really stormwater management at its best, and turned it into a park that had all the contemporary, that had all the picturesque principles. But the contemporary part of it, what we're asked to do today that comes superimposed on it, one thing is innovation and technique. And so this is Amsterdam cleaning up pollution. I don't think at Stowe, Kent, and Brown were worried about pollution. They were in a period creating more pollution than anything else, industrial revolution, some of the worst pollution in the world, actually the one we're dealing with right here. But today, that's part of our job is innovation and technology. It's restoration and preservation to restore historical pieces. I think in the picturesque, they were creating the historical pieces. Now we have them, and we need to restore them and keep them because they are part of that empirical of our knowledge, of how we build up knowledge, that history. The other thing that's happened in the last 15 years is nature has become a program. So it used to be you would go out hiking in the mountains. Now you have to have nature in your parks. You have to have a balanced ecology. So nature has actually become a program element. It used to be you just have playgrounds. No, now you need a piece of forest. You need a piece of meadow. You need a piece of thing. So nature as a program is another part of our contemporary world. Functional landscapes. They have to clean the water. They have to be part of a bigger system. They have to be part of your community, whether it's children or two people. It has to have flexibility. It has to be able to take on a whole lot of people and then at the same time be there for one person in the same space. So how do you create those spaces? That's what I say when I say add contemporary to picturesque. All these contemporary needs that you need to deal with and actually create with give that a real richness to a project. So I'm going to show one project that is, I feel, a combination of all these things. And it's in Valencia, Spain. It's 52 hectares. We hopefully will go on site on phase 1 in October because the Spain's economy is coming back up. But as you can see, we designed it in 2011. One of the things that happens in European cities is that originally the train station was right in the middle of the city, so it didn't really matter what the train tracks did, but then the city grows around it. And so then the train tracks, and this is true in Paris, Barcelona, all the European cities, you have this huge yard right in the middle of your city that looks like this, and that nobody can get across except a tunnel here or a tunnel there. So our project is this park, and then all of these buildings here for a kilometer down, we're doing a new neighborhood, because these are all the support buildings for the train repairs. That whole infrastructure is moving outside of town, so all the buildings move out at it. We need residential, we need mixed use. So it's a two-part project. Valencia is wonderful. It's just beautiful. It's this great Latin warmth. It's warm in the summer. There's fountains. It's sitting on a huge aquifer. So it's a very fortunate community that has up here in the mountains, the river Turia comes down into this area, up into tall peanuts in here, beautiful, beautiful river. And it comes into what is called the huerta. And the huerta is done by the Moors, and it's an irrigation system that this aquifer sits underneath this entire piece. And then it comes, daylights here in the Albufera. So all that is sweet water. All of that is giving the irrigation. Where do you get your oranges? Valencia. Where do you get all your fruit from all of your vegetable? Valencia. It's an amazing place for that. And so looking at that, said, okay, what's the concept of this place? It feeds Europe. So it's the bowl. It's this bowl that feeds everything. And there's these algarias here, which are basically the little houses that you put all the produce in. La Queria, there's one right here on our site, because this used to be a huerta, and all the levels around it are higher, so the entire site's like a bowl, because I have this one historical piece here. And this is my sketch of doing a series of bowls that connect, and what is held in each one of those bowls. But then you need to look at the neighborhoods, and each neighborhood has developed over time with this central axis through it where the trains ran before. And what's happening is we're putting the trains underground, and so the main station stays where it is, but all the tracks will be gone. But each part of these areas, so this is metalwork, this was, we call it the walls, so each one of these neighborhoods has different characters to it, and all of this area was a huerta on this side. So as all those, you want to reconnect them because they were all cut off from each other before. And these are the major accesses that come into that from around. But you don't want to see through again. You want people to not transit through the park. You want the park to be a destination. So the idea is never can you see all the way through. You can see in, and once you're in, you discover other things. And so as we draw in from all the access, this is called the north-south axis. As you can see, you look this way, you can't see through. Or you're coming here, you look this way. If you're coming through here, you're seeing that. Or if you're coming through here, you're seeing that. So what that's done is create a series of bowls. And each one of those bowls has a program in it. And what's interesting is by the ulas, which are over by where the aquifer comes to light, when it rains, there's these natural bowls that all the rain sits in, and then it filters through the sand, and it regenerates the aquifer. So it's Valencia, the bowl is about food, but it's also about the way nature there also works. So inside each of these bowls is a program with a main north-south axis. There's two types of water. There's what we call urban water. That's the kind of water you play in, you have fun in. And then there's the natural water, and that's the water that works. And that's the water that cleans all the other waters. But every time you enter into the park, you enter alongside water, like the huerta. The water is always guiding you through a series of channels into the park. Then there's what I call the tool poles of attraction. Remember, Kent, there's the object of desire, but you can't get straight to it. You have to go around. So there's two objects of desire. One is an art center here that you see from the south, but you can't see it from the north until you get all the way down here. But here is a Mediterranean display garden with great big shade houses, architecturally very tall, and you can see it all the way down. But as you come through, you discover this piece and that piece. So what it does, it pulls people through this way and gets them into the center of the park where they actually get drawn in different directions. So that is what the basic plan looks like. So one water, the urban water, comes up here and the natural water here. This is called North Plaza, Central Plaza, South Plaza, and then this is the Art Center, and we're going to go around this way on the program. So how do you form the bowls? Land movement. So everything that is dark is high, and everything that is the light green is low. So as you come in here, you can't see the Art Center till you're all the way over here. But guess what? You can see all the way to the Mediterranean Center. If you come in here, you can see the Art Center, but you can't see the Mediterranean Center till you're here. So the whole thing works on this perception of space and the height of your eyes and how your body moves up and down. So you can move up on top of this and you can perceive this, but if you come through here, you'll never perceive that until you're here. So it makes the space look like twice as big because there's this constantly opening and closing of vistas and views. So this is what it looks like sculpted. And I've been working with clay all my life, and it's one way for me to understand how to manipulate things and move things and get my eye down and understand how I'm moving through that space. So it's a very important tool. Today with rhino, grasshopper, you can start experimenting with it. There's nothing like having it in your hands. The great thing about doing it physically, you can't cheat. It's always staring at you. That grade you forgot to do on the other side that's all of a sudden a 9-foot wall, that can't happen when you have the model in front of you because you can see it. You can see you haven't solved the problem. And that's what's great about physical models is they really don't allow you to cheat. So this is the plan. I'm going to just go through. This is not extremely beautiful as a rendering, but it explains the program. There's Arts Plaza. This is urban food. How do you grow food today? What is the huerta? What is it historically? We had buildings, 9 buildings that were in this area. We've moved to create restaurants, children's center here. The Mediterranean display garden explains how do you grow, have any kind of outdoor space without sun. We're building tighter and tighter cities. So one of our biggest problems is dry shade. How do you live with dry shade? What do you do with dry shade? How do you exist as we put those buildings closer together? So this is really about water and shade. This is a large amphitheater here. This is the natural lake that cleans all the water. This is a sensory garden and a market, North Plaza, Central Plaza, South Plaza, and this is the main pathway through them. And we call that the north-south access. So these are CGIs, these are computer-generated images. So we did have these historical buildings. Everything else is new and over. So we have an events plaza that has a large water feature. You turn it off, flexibility. You can have a market in there. You can have a lot of different activities. The whole Central Plaza is based on the Mediterranean. You actually watch people promenade. So there's 2 types of spaces. There's the side space where you can play, and then the center space where you can walk. And so you can sit and watch somebody promenade, or you can sit and play on the side. And it's framed by palms with jacaranda in the center. So it's a very strong axis that carries you through, but also part of your daily life in the Mediterranean. This is North Plaza. Actually, that pool of water is glass, and it lights the train tracks down below. And there's areas for seating. If you get out of work, you don't want to walk all the way into the park. You just want to stop for a quick lunch. And so you have places close to the edge of the park where people can come in, where they don't have to go into the very center of the park. So it becomes more part of their daily life, and make sure those edges are active, and they're always active for the people in those neighborhoods. This is Central Plaza. This is the historical area, and this is the hall for the Arts Center, a very open plaza that is for events. And then this is the South Plaza with an art piece that actually tracks the trains underneath, and the light patterns talk about the movement of what was there before. The other thing, this is the natural water feature that is filtering all the water, and you can see the big shade houses in the background. We really looked at the native environment from the edge of the river to the riparian, and that area is very much represented on the other side of this lake, on this side. We also looked for the amphitheater, looked at all the oaks. So we have pinnads, which are parasol pines, Pinus pinea, and also a large family of oaks. So a lot of meadow also, trying to get that to be a more flexible space, and also an amphitheater, and it's a capacity of 10,000 people. This is some of the images of the natural oak groves and worked with Kew Gardens quite a bit. I work with horticulturists all the time. You can't know everything. Working with horticulturists are really interesting. They can help you with your companion plants. They can help you get your planting so it actually works and functions. The other thing we did was the planning of the entire neighborhood to the south, which was something found very interesting. Now, the basic plan was given by a urban planner, so I'll try to explain. The park is here. This is 1 kilometer, and there's a big green space here. So these are big public green spaces. These streets and these housing blocks, which are apartments, are a given. We couldn't change anything. But what we discovered is that I call it the 180 meter. If you've got 2 kids and you've got a bag of garbage you're going to try to get rid of, and you want to go to the dry cleaners and you want to buy a milk, you're not going to walk over 180 meters, if you want to get to a playground. So for families, that 180 meter is what these circles are, and saying, okay, what is that inner neighborhood? And so what we've done is, you see these dotted lines here. We've created these isolated blocks that everything functions inside of each block. So an example here, we've connected all those blocks with alleyways so the kids can play in alleyways. We've given a center green on each one, and then these are administrative buildings, all the yellow, and all the blue is housing. So it's a very mixed-use area. When you get into detail of each of those, you have the big alleys in brick, small plazas, but then you have urban food. So you have allotment gardens here, you have outdoor tables, chairs, barbecues, water. It's very much a society that lives outdoors. And every apartment building can see a playground from their windows. So all the brown spots are playgrounds here. So if your kids are down below, they want to go out, you can still see them. And I think if you do really dense urban city with kids, you'll understand it's one of the most important things is trying to make sure they're safe. But this stays the classical promenade, Latin, everybody wants to go down. It's sort of like in Barcelona. And these are all the public places. You play pétanque, you play jeu de boule, you do different activities all the way down here. And this is about the larger community. So it's really, you have your inner community here and your larger community there. So that's the end of that project. But I think it does embody the principles of the picturesque and also the principles of the contemporary. It really works with ecology, and I think the urban ecology is actually about, you have man's habitat and then you have nature's habitat. And how do you get those two habitats to live together? And we've worked through the cultural water and natural waters to create this one whole. We've recycled everything on site, every piece of steel, wood, brick, buildings. And this is just a very basic collection of all the storm water because we're refeeding back into aquifer, filtering it back through the sounds like the eulas do naturally that go back into, that's why each bowl actually functions as its own collection for storm water. All the buildings are being changed into restaurants, museums, places for kids. You can see the distribution of all the buildings. So it's a fun project. Phase 1 is all of this. Once that's done, then they dig the trench and they put the train in. That's phase 2, and this is phase 3. I hope I'm alive when they finish it. Landscape and urban density. This is the other thing I wanted to talk to you guys about because it's really what's happening in Asia right now is what we call 100% replacement. So if you have a piece of land, I'm a developer, and I want to put a building on it, you have to replace 100% of that landscape. Singapore made it part of their urban law for their central business district in 2009. Right now, they're playing with the idea of some sites requiring 125% replacement. So what that means is if I put a building up there and I put a chiller on the top, you know what a chiller is? It's your AC. It's what keeps you warm and cool. That's the thing that makes all the noise. If you put that on top, that's not landscape. What it means is you got to open that building up in the center and put landscape in the center to get your 100% because your roof is not landscape. So it means that you've got some very interesting architectural solutions that happen with it. And it also raises the question, do vertical walls and landscape actually count? Are they part of that 100%? What is the vertical wall of landscape? Is it applied building system? Is it got some ecological value? It reduces heat gain. It uses a lot of water, uses a lot of fertilizer. What's the balance? These are questions that are out there in the field that nobody has actually been able to quantify the green walls to say, are they good or are they bad? Yeah, they look cool, but what else do they do? So I think they're an opportunity to build meaning and place. And if you can get some more meaning into your piece, it'll be interesting. But this is what you do not want. You don't want your green wall to just be this thing you plop down next to the Eiffel Tower, Seattle, that every place has its identity. So when I say there's this opportunity to build meaning in place, it's always take the opportunity to be a meaning in place and avoid trying to do the Hilton Hotel that looks like the same Hilton every place in the world, because that's when people disassociate from their environment because it's no longer theirs. It belongs to somebody else. The green walls. Patrick Blanc is absolutely brilliant at it. He I think he's been doing it about 15 years. Look at the diversity that he puts in here. You get close to these, they're marvelous. They're absolutely marvelous. They're holding up. Visually, they're great. Then guess what happens? This is another green wall that's in the middle of an airport. No ecological factor, is purely decoration. You might as well have put a rug up there, but it's growing. And so all of a sudden, its green has become decor. Then you get into the Dumulhauser in South Korea. This is south of the river in Seoul. If you haven't gone to Seoul, I'd say go there. I think it's a great city. It's got really interesting architecture, interesting landscape. But this one makes me very sad because it's all Pachysandra terminalis. It's one type of plant. And actually on the side, they added a second plant. Great diversity, okay? So it's not gonna help any of your little animals or birds or anything, right? It's basically, you might as well put up a plastic carpet, and that's what happens when they fail. And this is all plastic. And this is also in Seoul. So I think the question about what is the green wall is something that we need to explore. This is a project with Christoph Ingenhoven that is a development piece. We're in Singapore. We are doing, if I have time, I'm trying to watch my time not to go over. we're building this park here. Andrew Grant is building this park here. This is the main business district of Singapore, and this is the site we're building on right now. So it has a park on one side and another side, and look at the cross through there. Now, this is sort of one of those scary things. Singapore is all landfill, a lot of it. So you can see here, this is the new grid that is going to overlay on this landfill that they've been doing for 30 years. And it takes a while. They keep putting land on it. It sinks. They add more. So to get stabilization, and this is Andrew Grant's park here, and our park, which isn't built yet, it would be there. So you can see our site is right in here. This is the concept of Christoph. It's called the Green Heart. It's a mixed-use development. It's a super block. So each one of these is the size of a normal building. See this here? So these two are residential towers, and these two are office towers, and there's a green core all the way through it. Now, where are we? What kind of place is it? What kind of feeling do we want to give this? So I work quite a bit in Singapore and have for a while, but there are very different types of vegetation in the tropics. Whether it's high in the mountains, you can go to Costa Rica and you go up into cloud mountains. You can go on to the edge of Singapore and Malaysia. It's a different kind of tropics. Hawaii is a different kind of tropics. And so what is the feeling of this tropic in this area? And taking inspiration from the area. Then these are all our different levels. This is 100% replacement. This is the ground floor, second floor, third floor, fourth floor, 15th floor. And each one of them has a different landscape in it. These two floors are retail. This is a spa with entrance into the offices here. The fourth floor is the party floor. And the top floor is really for the offices lunchtime to move out. This is the ground floor. We have a main axis coming through here. And we created, because the second and the first and second floor are very connected as far as retail, we created a bridge that walks through this vegetation and goes from the ground floor all the way up. And as it does, it drops waterfalls through, and then different pathways to here. These are called city rooms. It's part of Singapore's planning that on the ground floor, you have to create 25% of the space as open public city rooms that have protection from the rain but are open to the air. So they can't be conditioned. They can't have any walls, but you have to protect them from the rain for a certain percentage. So these are the top floors above. So all of this is covered. So they'll have fashion stores, car shows, markets, and this is programmable space in here. This is what it looks like in the perspectives. So you can see our major bridge that is coming up through here, through the waterfalls, and this is the second floor here, and this is the third floor in here, and everything cascades down. This is a section through it, so you can see the third floor here, second floor, first floor. That's how you get 100% replacement, is you're layering landscapes on top of the landscapes, which is fairly easier to do in the tropics than it is here in Toronto. With the cold. But this is the spa level. So at this level, you have an opening here, so you cannot cross over here. So these are entrances into major offices, banks, lawyers, whatever. So filtering out that edge so people cannot actually look across. And then this is all the spa, the heated pools, the treatment areas, areas for kids, the lap pools. This is just a quick perspective of entering into the offices and that filtering back. This is the party floor. The party floor is fun, except it's full of core. Look at all the cores. So those cores are all going to different floors. But this here, what we have is, instead of warm pools, we have cool pools, and they create cool fog. And so by creating cool fog, they lower the temperature outside. It's always hot in Singapore. You walk out, you sweat, okay? The thing about sweat is if there were no morals, you would actually be better naked, because everything's the temperature of your body. It's sort of like 96, and it's like 100% humidity. So clothes are a bit of a drag, but if you can lower the temperature naturally through ventilation, fans, and cool air coming up, you create a very, very comfortable environment. Nobody walks very fast in Singapore, which I discovered the first time, because as soon as you walk, you just sweat. So these are the party pools. There are bars here. These are two signature restaurants that look at the heart here. It's a fun place. Singapore is all about at night also, because the temperature drops a bit. All the walls will have things climbing up them. You'll have the steam pools, as you can see here. Really an environment that you come into. And then this is, just the 15th floor, places to come out and have lunch. This is some of our chillers are coming in here. Some of our pieces just showing what people can do during the day. Notice that sun coming in the side. So really looked at how the sun moves around the building and where we can get light, where we can't get light. And this is our very top floor with all our major M&E in here. Working with the M&E, filtering it out so we can't see it. This is really not for people. This stuff makes so much noise that you don't want to be next to it. But from the street, this is how it feels walking in. We're in the ground. We're up to our third basement right now. We have 4 levels of basement below us. We connect to all the MRTs underground, all that. So it's an exciting project. This is Washington, D.C., and this is not, it's 100% replacement. It's a mixed-use development. I really, and it's with Foster's and Partners. So it's the convention center side. So we did a National Portrait Gallery here. We just won Union Square, which is all of this. And if you have patience, I could show you that project, but I think I'm going to run over time. But this is L'Enfant's plan. And L'Enfant's plan is one of the most amazing urban plans in the world. And as you do the historical research through it, you find all sorts of variation in the grid. And they just put this horrible super block here. And so the first thing we did was we broke it up and put the street grid back into it, and then this becomes a bow tie park, and I'll talk a little bit more about it. And the convention center moved up here by Vignoli. This is the bow ties, and they're all through Washington, D.C., and they exist in L'Enfant's plan from the very beginning. And it turned out that our bow tie actually in his plan showed a fountain right here. And this is New York Avenue here. So this is, excuse me, I should have done this. This is 9th, 10th, 11th. This is I, A, B, C, D, F, G, H, I, and that's up there. So it's New York cuts through it. Then we looked into, historically, there were all these alleys that went through there. So the next thing we did, we put the alleys in. And to break down that scale, because look at how big these buildings are still when you look at the scale around them. And then we tried to create opportunities from that scale of, this is obviously part of historical bow tie, and we had to go through all the commissions on this, and this is what we called Central Park. This is a tool that we use a lot, and I don't know if you've been exposed to it. There's 2 companies that we work with. One is called Intelligent Space, and the other one is Space Syntax. And what they do is they measure how people walk through cities and where people go and why they go certain places. So everything that is red is retail that works, and the reason it works is rapid transit, destination prone, visibility. I get out of a metro, I can see this 100% corner, I'm going to go there to shop. And you can see our site, because it's just big hole like this one. See this big hole? Look at all the green around it. That means your retail's not working. That means your city's not alive. There's no restaurants, there's nothing. And so looking at that, once we put our alleys back in there, everything comes alive. Because you've got so much more accessibility, you've got visual cues bringing you through. Healthy city, right? So you want people to densify. You want people in there. You want them to be doing stuff. So these are the alleys, and the alleys are all about small retail. No big boxes are allowed. No chains are allowed. It's all about home design, local artists, and hopefully they'll stick to it, but that was the concept. Then our project is there's 2 offices, 2 rentals, and 2 condos here. This is a mixed use that we're actually working on right now, and a new hotel we're working on. But this area is what has been completed now. These streets were opened at Christmas. This plaza was opened at Christmas. This fountain still isn't commissioned yet, and it should happen this month when we stop freezing. So looking at these different areas, I'm going to look at this one first. This is a section. When we call it 100% replacement, we have 4 levels or 5 levels underground parking. Look at our trucks. All the trucks deliver underground, which is very unusual. Huge ramps coming in. So we're sitting on slab. Everything is on slab. This park here is really part of this park, and traditionally there was a sight line through here to I Street and to this opening. In the composition, we did a very large fountain, and what it does, it articulates a space that you have a pathway through here to I Street. You have a forecourt to the hotel. This is a restaurant area. You have a forecourt here. Then all of this becomes public event area. And this has kiosks in it, so you're walking, you just want a sandwich or something here, a vendor is here. So it looks like one big space. It's actually broken down into a number of smaller spaces that work together. This is the CGI that we're using the same marble that is part of the marble that's used on the Washington Monument. And so bringing in the historical, what's used in Washington. So this is the plaza that is opening now. This is all the roofs. When we talk about 100% replacement, we did all the roofs. And it's one of the things I want to talk to you most about is that you don't just design on the ground. You design everywhere. And it's my expression is, if there's sky, it's mine. If there's a ceiling, it's architecture. If there's not a ceiling, you should be doing it. And it's basically the minute you walk out the door, you're in landscape. So if you're on top of a roof, there's sky over it, you should be doing it. And so don't limit yourself to just doing that plaza they told you to do. You know, you're supposed to, reach out and do everything possible to get that. So we've done all of these roofs. Some of them are condos, some of them are party roofs where the people in the building share them. These are some of our renderings, and I want you to look at these levels. So these are apartment buildings. I know, again, I said this is really for landscape students to understand the technology that's going on out there. All of these buildings, all these apartments have ventilation. Now, you can shove it into the basement, it costs a fortune, or you can take it up to the roof. The minute you take it up to the roof, it makes a mess. So what we did is each one of these roofs takes all the ventilation, all the extraction of all of these apartments through the roof. So it looks here, this allows the window cleaners to come along here. This gives you security. It steps up. What's underneath it? It's all your vents. We've spent 3 months with the mechanical engineers making sure that somebody could have a fabulous terrace, that we have 100% replacement, and all those vents get out and they work, and the deck can be picked up and repaired. So I think that you have these amazing spaces. They work technically, but they also work for the public. So when somebody says, no, we're going to just stick the M&E up there, no. How are you going to do it? Do you take the sound out of it? How are you going to make our city, every piece of land, work for our cities? Then the Central Plaza, we looked at, again, we go back into history, large African-American community in DC. The G. Benz quilts are just absolutely fantastic. They're part of a tradition. So we based this central plaza on a quilt design, a very famous quilt design. Now it has a water feature in it that you can turn off, so you can have events in that space. There's two things that happens, that the vegetation creates these areas for restaurant seating, spill out, but then you have other seating here, which I call, you don't have to spend money to be here. Really worked with the developer to create enough public areas where people could bring their own lunch, they come down from their office, they can eat outside, you don't have to spend money to be here. And making sure that you get that balance so you don't end up with a totally one type of population, that you get a diversity of populations. So when you turn the water off, you can have an event for approximately 1,000 people. This is a CGI that shows the look. This was in November, where we're just finishing up the different pieces. This is a terrace, one of the terraces built that somebody is moving into as we speak. These are the alleys. Now the alleys really use borrowed light. They use the reflective lights off all the facades, and making sure that we understand how that light comes down and hits what facade into another. This is all natural light. This is not direct sunlight. This is all reflected. So we did a lot of study on reflected light to make sure that we're getting that light all the way down. And this is at Christmas Central Plaza. Obviously, the trees need to grow. They look really small, but it will be a nice space. It is a nice space. I can stop here because it's 7:30 and other people might have things, or I could show one more project in Singapore. So it'll take about 10 minutes. One more? Okay. I love Singapore. This is Singapore for me. It's nature, it's man, it's everything mixed. It's like I said, you could be naked and it would work. Our site is this site here. And this was a big competition for all three sites. This was our entry to the competition. We won this end and Andrew Grant got this. But this here, our view is that, the Central Business District. And the sun sets here. So we're looking at a setting sun over water. So I think we got the best side. Also, it's on a curve. So again, remember the curve. As you walk along it, you don't know where you're going to end up. You can never see to the end. And that's what's fabulous about this. You're walking along, you see all sorts of things, but you don't know what's out there. So you're always curious. It's like climbing a mountain. Looking at Singapore, as I talked about the body, the shadow of the leaf, that architectural texture of the leaf. This is a woodcut that I think is just fantastic, that represents everything. This is the leaf pattern of the ginger plant. And it is the body of men rowing a boat. And they are so intertwined in the tropics, that those two pieces. And also because everything grows everywhere, everybody builds on multiple levels. And so the vegetation just keeps going up and up. And all the staircases are outside and everything winds in, and then everything goes down below. So you don't live on one level, you live on these multiple levels. Looking at that, it gets hot. And so these are the main prevailing winds. Now, this is the big bay, and this is the closing of the bay, and the ocean is out here and out here, but these winds. So in my sketch, I said, okay, I want to bring that wind in and just give you a scale. This is 1.8 kilometers long, and this width is 300 meters. So it's a big piece. It's not a little park. And so trying to get that wind through water. Remember, water cools the air and makes it more pleasant. So really pulling the air into what I call these inlets. There's also this 150 to 180 meter rule that is, when you're in a city, or you're almost in any landscape, your eye can take up, you know how it feels to look at a football field? You can take up that football field and pretty much half again, or almost to 200 meters in your realm of vision. Beyond that, you've moved into something else. In a city, blocks, you can move through one or two, up to three. You've changed neighborhoods. You know, it's again that 180. There's this influence thing that happens. And so creating these inlets, I put them at edge to point, they are 150 to 180 meters between them. So as you come down a path, you hit an inlet, and then you hit another inlet and another inlet. And all those inlets are actually leaves, and they're 100% replacement. All the buildings are underneath them. So it's not just park. We have a lot of food and beverage, and we have a lot of activities. And so we put the theme to the park to be the body. Anything the body does happens in this park. Do you buy clothing? Do you eat? Do you take a sauna? Do you run? You know, what do you do with your body? Anything you do with your body happens here. And so every leaf is a different theme on the body. It's also, there's a marathon track between it. So this is the 3D model that shows all the different inlets and all the different leaves. And this is all done in Rhino. And that you can see underneath each one of these is restaurants, parking. You'll see them in things in different images. And then there's this marathon walkway that weaves all the way through, which is part of the greater walkway of Singapore. So this is the basic plan. Right now we are designing this pedestrian bridge. That is 320 meters to give you scale, okay? And the main roadway comes in here. This is future development. Right now it's a golf course that I absolutely hate because it used lots of phosphates, nitrates. We grab all the water from the golf course and we put it through our water filters. We have stormwater filters to take those out because this is a new dam. And what happens in Singapore is they do not have enough water. You wouldn't believe it with all the monsoons, but all the water goes through those pod soils and just goes out and it flushes out. They don't have aquifers. That's one of the things about the tropics. They have constant source, but they don't have retention. And so they end up buying their water from Malaysia, which makes them extremely dependent. So one of the things they have been doing is they put these dams in. This becomes a clean water reservoir. And that water is held and taken up to the top of a mountain on another reservoir, and that is redistributed through pressure through all of Singapore. So it's really important not to put junk in here. And the other thing is we have the Chinese boat race, which is, this is a kilometer from here to here. Have anybody ever seen a Chinese dragon race? They're fabulous. They've got these beautiful carved boats, and it's a big deal. And so the race starts here and it finishes here. So this is our visitor center here. And then I'm going to talk about each one of these inlets and leaves very briefly so I don't go way over my 10 minutes. This is a boat hoist here, so a boat can come in here, a yacht, come in here, go to Kowloon Basin. This is the big stadium back here, and the Central Business District is there. So these are some of our perspectives and drawings, that this whole area is a water treatment area, and it's this, and it filters out the bad stuff out of water coming off the golf course. This is the visitor center, and this is a floral area. I call it, come and take a picture here. And this is the section through the filtering of the water. These are reed beds, but you can go in there, you can picnic in there. There's boardwalks all the way through them. And you can see the section below. It goes through a series of phases to clean it. I've been doing lagooning. Lagoonage in French is basically that. I did my first lagoonage in a small community north between Paris and Brussels on the edge, where we cleaned all the sewage for 1,000 people using exactly this system, and that was in 1982. So when people start telling me we've got these brand new systems out here, I'm going, yeah, they've been around. There's some really good civil engineers that know how to do a whole lot of really amazing things. So this is the food garden, urban food again. What can you cook? What can you grow? What are the different things to grow, with a wonderful balcony walk here and a restaurant underneath. This is a view back to that, and you can see a section of that with the food garden here and the balcony above. This is the nighttime inlet. It has the major water feature. You'll see but it's really the big food and beverage. All of these are restaurants all the way underneath here. This is the signature restaurant I was just talking about. So it's all in here. These are some of my drawings of how the water feature will change and move. And this is an image of it as it looking across the water. This is a moment in time, but it's also trying to draw on the greenhouse that's by Wilkinson Air on the other side. And so taking the same curves of the greenhouse, so we're trying to make a vicinity of all these parks that they connect together. This is called Romantic Valley. This is the 3D modeling of it, but we have a wedding venue that takes up to 300 people here. There's some very, very big weddings in this population. Very magical as it moves up. This is the marathon route that is coming on the top here. There's a second route. There's a restaurant behind this waterfall. This waterfall is actually oxygenating the water. So this water is cleaning the water again from the golf course and this development. Then we drop the water to oxygenate it. And then this is actually a swimming pool area. It's a very large pool. The water goes through one other filter and it goes out into the bay. This is the community center for that. And then this is restoring the mangrove that existed here. They are building a new freeway right here, but this corner is what you're looking at right here, is a existing mangrove, and they have these, what they call the sand flappers. Have you ever seen a fish that walks on sand? And he has two fins that are out in front, and he walks on the sand, and his tail in the back, and then he has two eyes that sit up like this. And then if you move that way, he doesn't move, but his eyes do this. And they live out here. I mean, when I first did site visit before the freeway came through, there's all these sand flappers, watching us going, oh, don't take our habitat away. So we put it back, and they're back. So it's about the leaf. It's about the leaf. It's about the tropics. Remember, a place that fits. I think this is a place that fits. And that's the end, unless you want to see more. So I think I am allowed to take questions, right?
Yes, I was just going to say thank you very much, and if you wouldn't mind taking a few questions, and Dale will bring the microphone around.
Hi, my name is Najib. I'm a student in the fourth year BLA in Guelph University in landscape architecture. My question is, can you explain one more time what is 100% replacement?
You got a piece of land there, and then I put a building on it, right? I've just taken away that piece of land. I have to replace that piece of land someplace on this building. I can put it on the roof, I can cut it in half, I can separate it. I can pull it up like this, and I can have the landscape run through it. But somehow, that piece of land has to be replaced. So if I start out with 5,000 square meters of landscape, I've got to end up with 5,000 square meters there. And they cannot, it's not sort of. And you go back to the drawing table till you have exactly at least that. And of it, 40% can be hard space, but it has to be permeable hard space. You have to be able to collect the water. But you can't do more than 40% hard space. So, I mean, there's pages of code that you have to read through. I think it's a great thing. I think it's a wonderful thing. And they're talking about 125, which is even harder to do. So, does that answer?
When you were showing the condos with the patios out front and they had the electrical and stuff in them. Can you explain where the electrical or mechanical was in that picture and how you were mediating the noise and other things?
Okay, sorry to do this. I hate when people do that to me. You know, it's like, yeah, but, okay, here. So this is purely ventilation. Okay, so what happens is in an apartment block, you have two types of ventilation. You have your bathrooms, right? And then you have your kitchens. And you have to have air vents coming up. And the kitchens on top of it have to take oil, grease, and all that stuff. Yeah, and so all that has to go someplace. It has to be ventilated out. So the way the design is, you know, obviously the apartments have what we call wet rooms and dry rooms. And the wet rooms are your bathrooms and your kitchens. And those come up in certain areas. So what's happening here is they're coming up from below here. See that? Then I've got to get them out here. So these two are moving straight across, but then you have to get a fan in here, which has a certain dimension. That fan is pulling all of this to this point and then pushing it out here. This one, because for some reason, I don't remember why, ended up coming out here and going out there. So it's just taking all the necessity. It's not about electricity. Electricity is easy to get through. It's small. It's all your air ducts that are hard to get through. And so when you look at this, you see how this steps up? And see there's a bench here? The bench is exactly where those fans are that are deeper, okay? So if you look at this, guess what? That's where all your fans are. That's where your bench is. And so that bench, you know, the fans are, it's all coordinated to work as a space for people and at the same time technically work.
Okay, so it's venting out the sides of the building.
Yeah, and then it all comes out these sides here, away. And see, we've put vegetation here so people never get to that edge. But it was, you know, we'd never done it before. And it was kind of, how do we make this work? How do we, because they started just punching things through the terraces. I'm going, no, you know, it stinks. And it, you don't want it. It smells bad and, you know, it makes funny noises and all sorts of stuff. So let's get it out of here. So does that help? Yeah.
Hi. First of all, thanks for the lecture. It's great to get an insight into your practice. As students, we have the opportunity to theorize, to discuss, and to be able to debate about ideas and ideals about designing within landscape and larger questions. I'm very enthusiastic about these projects in Singapore. I've been to Singapore. I really enjoyed it as a city, but something to me that was kind of hanging over me when I was in Singapore was an awareness of how this land that they've created has been built, the material it's been built from, and questions about where that's come from and the ecosystems that's affected. And I wonder, as somebody who's obviously in a really enormous way in practice, how questions like that come up in the office and whether it's something that's, whether you guys even have time to debate such things or discuss such things, and how that feeds into practice, of whether it does in fact feed into practice, whether you benefit from that.
It does, and I think it depends where you are. So in Seattle, we do brownfields, we do no greenfields. If it's greenfields, we won't touch it. In Singapore, we arrived on a situation that had been reclaimed land forever. And so it's not like we're reclaiming new land, but it's an interesting debate between man and nature. You have this population that isn't doing what Russia is right now, and going grabbing land from somebody else. It's trying to stay within its own boundaries. And, excuse me, but I find it really irritating. So who am I to say to you, Singaporean, wait a minute, you don't have the right to create a place to live? But on the other side, they're really making a huge effort to make it as ecological as possible. The thing about Singapore is that I also like is that I have never met a parks department with so much power in my life. And their motto is, we are a city in a park. We're not a park in a city, which means national parks runs everything. Every sidewalk, every inch that they can plant, they plant. And so, and they're just going, they're just going for it. The director of the Urban Development Agency was the CAO of NParks. And he's the one that, with his predecessor, brought in this 100% replacement. It's basically trying to create Singapore that lowers the heat sink, lowers the heat gain, makes it a more comfortable city to be in. And so, at one point they are reclaiming land. On the other side, they're trying to do a lot of things that Abu Dhabi's not doing, Dubai's not doing. Although those countries are now really making some efforts. At the end of this, we're doing a desert restoration in Abu Dhabi that's really fascinating. We're reclaiming land that's been overgrazed and things like that. So, people grazed it because they needed to eat, but they destroyed it by doing it. So there's always this kind of balance. Does that answer? Okay. Somebody else, or you just start? Is there, no, go on, because it took me 2 years to get here. So.
I just want to say, it's not a question, it's just a comment, but when you said this is kind of more only appropriate for students, I find as a practitioner very appropriate as well. And thank you so much for, it's sometimes great to get back to basics and also to see your process. Yeah. Thank you.
I think that the theory is something that I can't do in big groups like this. It's so personal, that the conceptual things are so personal that I think you can talk to 2 or 3 friends about it. I'm sure, Rem Koolhaas can lecture on those things. I can't. I don't know how to do that. I know how to feel them. I know how to do them. But I think to really, the thing I complain the most about landscape architecture is it's not being taught. That it's really complicated to do it right, and it's very complex. And building this building's complex, and architect students go in and they learn about all the complexity of this building. But landscape, are you learning how hard it is to design one of these things? Because it is hard to do it right, to get it so it isn't just a piece of decoration or a piece of graphics. That is something that has meaning, it fits, it environmentally works, it's beautiful, it's in budget, it's all that stuff. And it's hard to do. And so I keep coming back to basics. Landscape architecture is a profession and an art, and you have to learn how to do it. That's, I guess, my message.
Let me add a difficult point, perhaps faculty.
The guy who teaches it. Now I should leave.
Thank you for a wonderful presentation. But in a strange way, let me peel away the beauty of the renderings down to the significance of the section, which addressed the thickness and constructed landscape mechanically, or I think of some of your other work, you raised the politics with Russia. So I'm going to slip to an earlier piece in some of your work, which to me addressed a number of issues, and there was a seamless shift from that which was, shall we say, botanical, to that which was the constructed landscape of the city of 3,500 years at least, as the Green Line excavates down to the Phoenician city beneath.
Yeah, it's a great project.
You know, there was a remarkable sense of depth, of section, of history, of evolutionary change. And I think it would be useful for the students to take that for a moment, because there's a continuity, an extraordinary time frame. And I might then use it as a lens to discuss that. In fact, a classical scholar from Stanford, Robert Pope Harrison, who poses two books a few years apart, one of them being On the Forests, and the other of Gardens. So again, trying to extend the range of landscape practice to the multiplicity of conceptual composition, but also to the range of materiality, which I think has always been evident in your work, which is why I respond to it.
So one of the things he's talked about is the Garden of Forgiveness, and I haven't shown it. It was conceived more than 10 years ago, and it's still not built. And it's on an archaeology dig, and actually I'm doing another archaeology dig right now in AUE that is one of the most extraordinary sites I've ever been on. We have 3000 BC burial and dwelling, which is unheard of. That layers of history in this section is really important. It's so hard to talk about all of this at the same time, but I also think there is a cultural section through time, but there's also physical sections. And I feel that our body moves through space, and you can get meaning in things too, but you really need to understand that physical section people walk through and move through. And I think it is poetic, and how do you really feel that? I'm probably not making a lot of sense because you're getting into my emotional area, so I get sort of fuddled. But I like to say, don't create space, create place. Remember, every time, see if I can say it a different way. Every time you feel something, jot it down why. You know, it's almost like every time you walk into a museum or history or death, try to capture that feeling, because that is what you're trying to do when you create a place, is capture those feelings, and so when people walk into it, they feel something. I don't know if you've been to the American Museum of Natural History in New York. Okay, so it's a high plaza, it's off the street, it has lots of water and jets in it. There's this planetarium that's all glass that sits on it, and one of the guards was watching the rain come down and the jets and the water coming through, and he was just, and the sunlight hitting it, and the architect that was doing his punchline was standing beside him, and the guard didn't know who he was, and he said, "Have you ever seen anything so beautiful?" That's our job. You know, that moment in that man's day just happened. And so if you can understand how to create that moment, I think whether it's through the section of history or understanding how emotions work is really important.
Thank you for the poetry.
There's one other story I do want to tell that I like telling, and maybe I was raised in that desert, and I was raised on a hill, and my brother and I noticed, I told this in one other lecture, and I saw it again. I said, I have to tell this story again because it's so true in how you design landscape. And every day, my brother and I would have to go over this hill, down a pathway to get the bus. And it snows a lot where I was raised. Well, the westerly winds come from the other side. And so what happens on an edge, if you watch snow and you guys are here, is it's going to create a cornice, right? And so it's going to create that peace. So my brother and I would go out there knowing we didn't know where the cornice stopped. And it was the most fun every morning, just disappearing into 9 feet of snow, and you slide out on the other side. So now I'm waiting to design the cornice with snow someplace where I can make somebody go down that path, and then all of a sudden they disappear into the snow. So that's what I mean. Remember what you experience and try to bring it back into your life. Does that help? Okay.
I was trying to set you up.
I'm an easy one on that.
And I've been to Yakima.
Have you been to Yakima? It's a cowboy town. I call it the place of banks, churches, and gas stations. And beautiful landscape. So are we done?